Hello again, everyone. Today we are continuing our work on grammar. Last time we were talking about some grammar basics, going over some terms, the difference between independent and dependent clauses, between phrases and clauses. Today we're going to look at 3 common grammar errors. I'm going to tell you what they are. I'm going to help you identify them and tell you how to fix them. So these are the kinds of grammar errors that pop up in all of our writing at some point. So we just have to train ourselves to spot them and know how to fix them, okay? So we're going to go over 3 common grammar errors. And then also there is a worksheet that goes along with this video that gives you a chance to try to identify and fix some of these errors, and I can give you some feedback on that before you take an actual quiz with real grade on these common grammar errors, okay? So make sure you do that worksheet and submit it as you're watching this video or right when you're finished, okay? All right, so let me get out of the way. I'm gonna pull up on my screen a worksheet that I normally give my students in class. So these are common grammar mistakes. We're gonna talk about 3 of them. The very first one that we're going to talk about is a sentence fragment. Maybe you've heard of this before, a previous English teacher has told you about this. A sentence fragment is where we have sentences that do not express a complete thought, okay? So there are 2 things that you can look for to make sure that you don't have a sentence fragment. The very first thing to look for, make sure your sentences have a subject and a verb. So for example, if you come across a sentence in your essay or someone else's essay that you're reading that says, the book's on the desk, and you think, something's not right about that sentence, ask yourself first, does it have a subject and a verb? Well, I have a subject here, the books, but I don't have a verb. This sentence is missing a verb, and therefore it's a sentence fragment. So I could just fix that by adding the verb sat. The books sat on the desk. Now I've fixed the problem of that sentence fragment. Here's another example. The books were bound in red cracked leather, sitting on the desk. The first sentence is fine. The second sentence, sitting on the desk, that's a sentence fragment because I don't have a subject. I have a verb, sitting, and I can probably figure out that we're talking about the books still, the books sitting on the desk, but grammatically that is a fragment. I need to put a subject in that second sentence. Now there's a couple different things I could do here maybe. I could combine them. The books were bound in red leather and were sitting on the desk. That could work. Or I could say the books were bound in red leather, and then in my second sentence, add my subject, they. They were sitting on the desk. Now I fixed the problem of that fragment, okay? So look for sentences that are missing a subject or a verb. That tells you it's a fragment and it needs fixing. The second thing to look for is make sure that when you have a dependent clause, it's actually attached to an independent clause. Remember last time we talked about dependent clauses. These are clauses that have subordinating conjunctions in them. They can't just hang out by themselves. They don't make sense alone. Here's an example. Although the books were sitting on the desk. Okay, what's the rest of that thought? Although the books were sitting on the desk, what? So what is although dependent on? If you have a subordinating conjunction in a sentence, make sure there's actually something there for it to depend on. So what I can do is just add that dependent clause to an independent clause, like this maybe. Although the books were sitting on the desk, no one saw them. The second part here, no one saw them, that is my independent clause. I can attach my dependent clause in the beginning to that sentence, no one saw them, and now I have fixed the problem of my fragment, okay? So that's the second thing to look for. Make sure dependent clauses are actually attached to an independent clause, okay? Let's practice. Let's look at a couple sentences right here. Why don't you pause this video and see if you can fix these 2 sentences. Thousands of new sites on the World Wide Web, and while they waited to see the doctor. They're fragments. How would you fix them? Pause the video and try and figure it out on your own. Okay, now hopefully you're starting the video back up again. You tried to fix these sentences. Let me give you a couple ways that you could fix these. You could say thousands of new sites are on the World Wide Web. I was missing a verb. I needed to add a verb there. Or maybe I could say thousands of new sites exist on the World Wide Web. There's several different ways that I could fix that. The key is I needed to add a verb into that sentence. Next, while they waited to see the doctor. So I look at this sentence and I say, okay, this is not a complete thought because there's still more you have to say for it to make sense. While they waited to see the doctor, what? I have a subordinating conjunction with the word while. That makes this whole thing an dependent clause. It has to depend on an independent clause in order to make sense. While they waited to see the doctor, they read magazines. How about that? So now I've added an independent clause to that sentence, they read magazines, and I've fixed the problem of that fragment. So there's lots of different ways you could fix that second one. That's just one example. Okay, so that's fragments. Let's go on to the second common grammar mistake, and that is run-on sentences. These are sentences that run independent clauses together, so complete thoughts without any kind of separation between them, okay? So if you have two independent clauses together, you have to make sure that they are either separated by a coordinating conjunction, made into two separate sentences with a period, or joined with a semicolon, which is this little thing right here. It's like the period above the comma, right? Adds a semicolon. So if I have a run-on sentence right here, the books were read, that's one complete thought. They were sitting on the desk. That's a second complete thought. I need to separate those two complete thoughts in some way. Otherwise, I have a run-on, and that's a problem. So I could say, the books were read, and I add in one of my coordinating conjunctions, one of my fanboys, and they were sitting on the desk. Run-on solved. Or I could add a period. The books were read, period, and then just start a new second sentence. They were sitting on the desk. That would also work. Or keep it all one sentence, but just add a semicolon. A semicolon can join two complete thoughts, just like this. Any one of those three ways will work to fix a run-on sentence, okay? So let's look at some examples. Again, here are two sentences. These are run-ons. I want you to pause the video, see if you can fix these on your own, and then I'll show you some ways of doing it that I came up with. Okay, so hopefully you paused that video, you tried to fix these on your own. Let me show you how I would do it, a couple ways that I came up with. And of course, there's more than one correct way to fix these. Okay, the first one, the rain was coming down in large drops. That's a complete thought. The wind began to blow. That's another complete thought. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put a semicolon right there, and that's all I have to do to fix the problem of that run-on, okay? Second one is a little trickier. Speaking to the audience, the CEO stated that sales had increased. That is my first complete thought. That's my first independent clause. Actually, they had not. That's my second independent clause. I have to separate those somehow. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put a period right here. I'm gonna capitalize the A and just make this next sentence, actually they had not, a complete sentence all on its own. So that's one way that you could fix the run-on there. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind, you cannot just add a comma between two independent clauses. You can't fix a run-on with a comma. That will lead to our third common grammar mistake, and that's a comma splice. So comma splices, third and final grammar mistake we're going to talk about today. Comma splice is when you have two independent clauses in a sentence, and they're separated by only a comma. Now, you can fix these kinds of mistakes basically in the same way that you could fix run-ons. You can add a coordinating conjunction between them. You can make them two separate sentences by adding a period, or you can replace the comma with a semicolon. So let me show you. Let's go to an example. The books were on the desk, complete thought. Then I have a comma. They were bound in red leather. This right here is my comma splice. I have to have more than a comma to join two complete thoughts. So for my revisions, I could add a fanboys, one of my coordinating conjunctions. I keep the comma and just add my fanboys, in this case the word and, that fixes the problem. Or I could take out that comma, my second revision here, just add a period, make them two separate sentences. That works. And my third option, take out the comma and just add a semicolon in its place. That's all I have to do. Any one of those three ways will fix a comma splice. All right, here are a couple sample sentences. Both of these have comma splices in them. Take a minute, pause this video, See if you can figure out how you would fix them, and then I'll show you some ways that I did it. Okay, hopefully you tried to fix those sentences on your own. Let me show you some possible ways of doing that. For number one, the Super Bowl was exciting. That's one complete thought. The commercials were even more exciting. That's another complete thought. So that tells me this comma right here is a comma splice. I have to have more than that. I'm going to keep that comma and I'm going to add one of my fanboys, a coordinating conjunction. I'm going to add the word but. I like that revision for this sentence. I think that works well. Now, number two, the party was fun, the food was excellent, and we didn't want to leave. That's a complete thought. We can't wait for next year. That's my other complete thought. So that tells me this comma right here, that's my comma splice. Now, I had some other commas in the beginning of this sentence, but those are okay. We're only worried about commas that are separating complete thoughts. So we don't have any complete thoughts here. We just need to focus on this comma that is separating this entire complete thought from the second entire complete thought. I'm going to take out this comma. I'm going to put a period. I'm going to capitalize the W when we make it a separate second sentence. Problem solved. So those are the three ways, the three different common grammar mistakes that you want to think about being able to identify them, being able to fix them in your writing and when you're reading over other people's writing. So the worksheet that goes along with this video is 10 questions, or I guess 10 examples. So what I want you to do for each one is first identify the mistake. Is it a comma splice? Is it a fragment? Or is it a run-on? And then come up with a revision. Remember, there's more than one right way to come up with a revision for these sentences, okay? So do that worksheet, submit it, then I'll take a quick look and make sure that you're on the right track. And next time, I think tomorrow, you'll have a quiz on those common grammar mistakes. So make sure that you see my feedback on your worksheet before you take that quiz. If you have any questions, you can always send me an email. I can provide you with more resources if you're still a little confused about any one of these things. All right, thanks guys. More later.